Okay, guys, good evening. So, we will discuss. So, in earlier class, we have seen the various constraint. Okay, and we have seen what is the use of constraint. Okay, so what and all the constraint we know? Can anyone tell how many types of constraint we have seen in the last class? If you remember all, can you please brush up those things and can you let me know how many types of constraint are there and what is the use of those constraint? Okay. What and all the constraint was there? Not null. Mm-hmm. Unique. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Primary key. Foreign key. Okay. Mm-hmm. Default and checkpoint. And check. Yes, yes, yes. Cool. So we'll discuss further. Okay. So last class we have discussed about the constraint. Okay, and we have seen the various constraint like not null. So what is the use of not null? Not null, if you want, suppose in my table, if I want to insert some record, but while inserting, if I want to force to the user, I want to force to the user to insert some value, it should not be blank. Okay, he has to provide some value. In that case, which constraint we should go? We have to go for not null constraint. That means, see here, so show tables. Okay, and what is the description? Okay, customer ID, customer name, account type. So okay, let me explain it. In the last class itself I have discussed this not null and unique key constraint in details. Okay, if you have any kind of confusion, you just refer to my last class. Okay, so here I am just defining the customer table, and you can see in this customer table how many fields are there: customer ID, customer name, account type, customer email, phone, and date of birth. So customer ID is of type int, customer name is of type varchar, account type is of type varchar, customer email is of type varchar, phone is of type int, and date of birth is of type date. And here you can see customer ID. Okay, what about the null? Are you are you allowing to the user he can enter null value or not? No. Okay, that means he has to provide some value, any value for this CID. At least he has to provide this value. He cannot leave this column as blank. Okay, if I will try to insert into this table, insert into table name is customers, and I will I will provide, okay, customer name, account type. I'm not providing here customer ID. You see here carefully. Okay, customer email, phone, and date of birth. I'm not including customer ID here. And now we'll see 102. Okay, sorry, we are not giving customer ID, so we'll provide some name, maybe some name ABC, and account type, maybe account type is saving account. Okay, and customer email, abc@javapuzzles.com. Okay, and phone, some phone number, and date of birth. So date of birth, maybe. Okay, I'm taking some date of birth. Okay, if I will press enter, okay, I am not providing customer ID value. So what will happen? Whether this record will be inserted successfully or not? Tell me, guys. Boblan, don't worry, we will discuss that in detail. Foreign key we'll discuss later. Tell me about this query. What about this? If I will insert the record, okay, without giving the customer ID, and we have mentioned customer ID is not accepting null value, that means we have to provide the customer ID. If we are not providing, what kind of error we are going to get? Which error we are going to see? It will give which error? Can you tell me that? Anybody? What will be the error? Hey, response, guys, please. What kind of doubt you are having? What about others? What about this query? What is the output we will get? Yes, varchar accept single quote or not? Single quote. So we have, see, varchar we are here. See the type, the customer name, okay, column, and what is the type of this varchar, and how we are providing the value for this customer name in the single quote only, right? Yeah, we are not including customer ID here. You can see now. Here we are not including customer ID. That is the reason I'm asking. Uh, that is the reason I'm asking what will be the output, which error or something, whether this query will be executed successfully or not. Customer ID has to give number. If not, error will be CID. No, I didn't get a loss. Anyway, let's see here. If we will not provide customer ID, it will give the error saying customer ID does not have a default value. What does it mean? Customer ID, okay, does not have the default value. Okay, so customer ID does not have the default value. That means is either you have to provide the customer ID value, or some default value should be there. Okay, if both the values are not present, that means null is not allowed. Okay, so customer ID, either you have to provide some value for it, or some default value should be there. If both of these are not there, in that case you will get error, because you have defined that already here, that boss, I'm not allowing user to enter null value, because we are not providing any value. That means by default it will treat by default it will try to insert the null value for the customer ID column, right? So that is the reason it is saying customer ID does not have a default value. Okay, so either we have to provide the value, or uh, some default value you have to specify. If both of these things, if you're not specifying, means you will get the error, because you have used the not null uh, not null this thing, not null constraint with this customer ID. Okay, so we have to provide customer ID. So that means we have to include customer ID here, and then you have to provide customer ID also. So got it right? So that means we are forcing the user. That means while inserting this record, okay, somebody is forcing me that, boss, you have to allow customer ID. You have to provide the customer ID at least. If you will not provide the customer ID, I will not allow you to insert some record into this table. Okay, so to fulfill this requirement, or to force to the user that he has to give the user ID, or customer ID. So in that case you have to use not null constraint. Got it? Now this time we will try. So it will be successfully entered. See here. Okay, there is no problem at all. Now we have already we have seen the one more constraint called, and we can define not null constraint any number of columns, because as of now we are having 6 columns. So all these 6 columns we can define as not null. Okay, that means all, if we want, or if my requirement is to force the user that they have to provide all the value for the all column. If you want to make such scenario, in that case you can define each column as not null. That means you are forcing to the user that you have to provide all the values for all the columns. Okay, while inserting the record, all the value you have to provide. So this thing you have to remember. Now second thing is, we have discussed about the unique key, right? So we have seen, if we, okay, let me check it here. Description about employees table, let me check. So okay, so as of now, employee ID, name, phone, there is no constraint we have used here. Okay, now my requirement is, okay, so my requirement is, as of now you can see here, select star from employees. So there can, if suppose if I'm insert into employees table. Okay, now I want to insert for employee ID, employee name, employee phone, date of birth, salary, and city. Suppose, and I am giving the duplicate values. Suppose you can see here this record is already present, right? So this record is already present. Now again, if I'm inserting the same record, okay, and same phone number we will take, okay, and date of birth we will take same, salary, okay, and same record. Okay, so what about this query, guys? Can you please quickly respond? What about this query? Will it execute successfully or not? I want response from everyone quickly. Please respond. Sagar saying no. Okay, what about others? Ullas is also saying no. Okay, okay. I am trying to insert duplicate record into the employees table. And if you want, you can see the description also for the employees table now. Okay. So what about this query? Sagar saying no. Sagar is saying no. Ullas also saying no. Boblan is also saying no. Akanksha saying yes. Yes. So we'll see here. So this query is executed successfully, right? Then why you guys are telling no? What is the confusion in that? Because why this duplicate is allowed? Because you have not used any constraint here, right? You are not using any constraint. If you are not using any constraint, what is the problem by executing this query? Isn't it? So Ullas, you have to see, I have already shown you the description about this table. So you have to just concentrate. We have not specified anything here. We have not specified any constraint, right? Then why, correct? So you guys have to be very careful while seeing the description of this each description of each table. Okay, so this query is executed successfully. Why? Because we have not specified any uh, constraint. Now you can see here, see at last the same record is inserted, right? Whatever is there in whatever our first record is there, Same record is at the last also. Now I want to avoid this situation. Okay, I don't want to allow user to enter duplicate value. What can we do? Respond quickly. If I want to allow, if I don't want to allow user to enter the duplicate value, what we should do? Okay, if I want to, if I don't, not CID, there is no CID column here. Ullas, yes, employee ID, correct. So if you will make unique, okay, that means yes, Sagar is saying unique key and primary key. Yes, we can specify both, but we have not discussed primary key yet, so we will see further. Okay, so if suppose let me create this table again. Drop table employee. Okay, why I'm explaining this thing in very slowly, because it will be very helpful in future. So you have to provide 100% attention here, so that you will not you know you will not be facing any kind of difficulty while remembering all those things. That's why I'm repeating this thing again and again. Just pay some attention here again. Let me create the table. What is what is the command, or what is the query that we need to provide here to the database while for creating the table? Create table employees. Okay, now how many columns columns are in front of you? Tell me. Employee ID is of type int. Okay, employee name is of type varchar, suppose 20. Let me specify 20. Employee phone, let me take it as begint. Okay, since I'm using MySQL, that's why begint. If you are using Oracle, you can use number. Okay, and in bracket you can specify the size of the number. Similarly, like varchar, how we are specifying the size of the varchar characters, okay, in the bracket 20. Similarly, you can use number also. In bracket you can specify the size in the case of Oracle. But here it's it's a bit simple here. Employee phone begin. Now date of birth is of type date. Salary is of type, let me take it as float. And city is of type, again I'm taking as varchar. Okay, and you should be very clear what is the difference between char and varchar also. It's a very important thing. Let me take it 20. So now my query, this is the query to create the employee table. Okay, and this query will create the table. Now my requirement is, I don't want to allow user to enter the duplicate record. In that case, we can go for unique key constraint. You can define as unique key, or if you don't want to write like this, you can specify unique also. Okay, both the case it is valid. Employee ID int unique. Now you can define all the columns as unique. There is no problem at all. Unique. Employee phone. Okay, let me take it as unique. Now let me create all the three columns: employee ID, employee name, and employee phone. These all three things. Or let me remove this unique keyword or constraint from the employee name. Maybe name can be duplicate. There are person who has the same name, right? So we should not use the unique constraint with the name at least. Okay, let me create it. So table is now created successfully. Now we want to see the description of employees table. Okay, see here, employee ID is of type int. Null is allowed, yes. We have not specified any not null constraint. We have specified only unique. That means here you can see unique constraint is available. Okay, that means user always have to provide the unique value only. If he is not providing any value, it's fine, no problem at all, because we are allowing null value. Okay, that means if user is if user is not providing any value for employee id, that is fine, it's okay. But whenever he or she will provide the employee id, okay, while inserting the data, it must be unique. Let me check this. Insert into employees table, employee id, employee name, employee phone, date of birth, salary, and city. Now employee id 101, you can take any integer value, but here I am considering only 101. Okay, so employee name, maybe some name you can specify here, employee phone, and some date of birth, and salary, some salary you can take, and city. Okay, as I have specified salary column as float, so you can just define like this also, 0.565 say, and city, so let's take it as Bangalore. So now you can see you have defined unique key as employee ID as unique, as well as employee phone also as unique. That means whatever the phone number and employee ID, employee ID you have defined as unique, employee phone also you have defined as unique. That means employee ID whatever you are providing, this one, as well as the phone number whatever you are providing, this phone number also will not, you cannot enter again in future. Okay, so remember this thing, id cannot be duplicated, phone also cannot be duplicated, always it has, all these two values always has to be unique. Let, you can check it here now. Okay, one record is inserted. If I will try to enter the same record, okay, if I'm giving different phone number, suppose, let me, okay, and I'm not changing the id, see here, what is the problem it is saying, what is the problem it is facing, it is saying duplicate entry 101 for the key employee id. Okay, so you can see here for employee id already you specified as unique key, and you are providing 101 again, since it is already present into this employee id already, so you cannot provide the same id again. Okay, you always have to provide a different value. Let me take as 10111. Okay, so this time it is valid. Okay, so here you can see, okay, id and phone, because we have specified only employee id and employee phone as unique, that's why it is taking only employee id and employee phone as unique. Rest of the thing can be duplicate, there is no problem at all, because employee name are same in both the case. See here, these entries are not duplicate, no, these entries are duplicate, but employee id and employee phone are not duplicate. Okay, so similarly you can define for all column, remaining employee name, for all column you can define as unique. That means n number of unique column you can define in single table. Okay, now my requirement is, okay, my requirement, see here, if I'm not providing any value, let me again show you something. Okay, I'm not passing employee id, here I'm removing. Okay, if I'm not passing employee id, and let me change the phone number. Okay, so it's fine. Now if I'm inserting, okay, query is okay. Let me check it. Okay, so for, see here, employee id null. Okay, so here I haven't provided employee id, that's why it is allowing you to uh, allowing you not to end. If you're not specifying employee id, if you're not providing employee id, it's fine, no problem. But whenever you will provide the employee id, it has to be unique. Let me let me check this null value again, because null also will be duplicate, right? If I'm not providing, and let me check this phone, change this phone number a bit, and see here. Okay, they can be means you can ignore this value, it's fine. You cannot, if you're not providing employee id, it's fine, so that you can ignore it. But if you are providing employee id, it has to be always unique. Okay, now my requirement is now is uh, I don't want to skip this value. Okay, that means I want to force to user, boss, always you have to provide the employee id. Okay, so that this null will not be there anymore. I don't want to see here null. That means I want to force to user, whenever somebody will enter the record into this, I want to make sure that employee id must be there and it has to be unique, both the condition this time. Okay, always user has to provide some value, plus it has to be always unique, both the condition we have to handle. So in this case we have to go for the combination of unique and not null. So let me drop this table again, drop table employee. So already you have seen null values are allowed. That means if you're not providing employee id, it's fine. Now my requirement is a bit different. Now this time let me create the table again, and this time, okay, employee id I don't want to be null, so I will restrict user. I will use not null constraint also. Employee id int, not null and unique, both I am, you can specify not null as a prefix or as a suffix, there is no problem. Okay, if you want to provide okay, if you want to force to user for employee name also, you can specify that not null. Okay, and you can also use not null with all the columns. Okay, there is no limit at all. You can specify not null any column. If you want to specify all the column, you can specify, as well as if you want to specify the combination of unique key as well as not null for all column, that is also allowed. Okay, there is no problem at all. Employee phone big int unique, let me take this as again not null, so I can use multiple combination. Salary, let me, okay, city also I'm saying not null. That means I'm forcing the user that they have to provide some value for city also. Okay, and employee phone unique not null, employee name not null, and okay, fine. Let me check the description. Okay, so employee id, you can see here we have specified employee id as unique and not null. What does it mean? It is that it is this, the meaning of this is primary key. Okay, we'll discuss that in detail, but consider this combination as primary key. Okay, so we can define n number of combination in single table, there is no problem at all. Okay, cool. But make sure we'll see the difference between unique not null and primary key, because there is a difference between these two. Here you remember this combination unique not null, this combination you can define n with n number of columns present into the single table. Okay, there is no problem at all. But in the case of primary key, you can define only one column as a primary key, and it's a mandatory condition. You cannot define more than one primary key. Okay, that we will discuss in later point in time. But now you can assume this unique not null you can specify for multiple column, there is no problem at all. Okay, now earlier this null values is allowed. That means employee, if user is not providing employee id, it's fine. But this time if I will not provide the insert into table, if I will not provide the employee id this time, it will give some complaint. Insert into employees, and if I'm not, I'm considering employee id, I'm considering only employee name. Okay, because it's a not null. See here, not null means null is not allowed. Okay, you have to provide some value. Okay, that means we have to, and similarly employee ID also, if I'm not concluding into this, let's see here, phone, date of birth, salary, and city. And I'm not providing employee ID, employee name, any name you can take, employee phone, and date of birth, and salary, city. So salary is, you can skip, no problem. Date of birth also you can skip because there is no, you haven't used any constraint with these two columns, date of birth and salary, but you have used the constraint with city, so you have to provide the city value because null is not allowed. You have used not null constraint with city column, we have to provide the value. So see here, field employee ID does not have the default value. That means you have to provide the default employee ID, or some default value must be there. If default value is not there, you are also not providing, in this case you will get this error because you have specified this employee ID column as not null. Okay, so remember this. So this time, if I'm skipping employee ID, earlier we were skipping employee ID, that time it's fine, okay, because null values are allowed, but this time null values are not allowed. You have to provide some value for employee ID, so we have to include employee ID. Similarly with employee name also, because employee name is also not allowing null. That means if you are not including this employee name, you will get the similar exception, similar error. Field employee name does not have the default value. Okay, so remember this thing. Okay, let me, okay, check it. So okay, column does not match count. Okay, so how many columns are there? 1 2 3 4 5 6, 6 columns are there. Okay, so we have to provide employee ID also, we haven't provided. Okay, this time value will be inserted. So make sure these rules always you have to, you will remember. Okay, okay, now my requirement, and few things that you have to remember is, okay, let me drop this table, drop table employees. Few things that you have to remember is, yeah, okay, while creating the table, let me specify phone. Okay, let me specify the phone. Instead of big int, let me specify as long. Okay, if you are specifying as long, and if you are using unique, in this case you will get error. Okay, because any column which is of type long, you cannot declare that column as unique. Always remember, this is the exceptional case. You always have to remember, any column present inside the table is of type long, you cannot declare that column as unique. Okay, but you can use not null constraint, there is no problem at all. So instead of unique, if I'm using not null, that's fine, no problem at all. But if you are defining as unique, then you will face the problem. So now this time not null and unique, if I'm doing, you will get the problem, you will get the error saying blog text column. Okay, employee phone used in key specification without a key length. That means ultimately it is trying to convey the message is that your column is specified as long with, okay, so this column cannot be defined as unique. Okay, remember this point. Now last and important point is, if I'm drop table employees. Okay, oh, there is no table at all. Okay, employee table itself I have deleted earlier. Now let me show. Okay, few questions the people are asking. Let me see here. Bhubalan is saying in date format, use only this accepted. So in database, accept date is possible. See, in the case of MySQL, this is the way of accepting the date. Okay, so how we are providing the date into the MySQL, this format always will remain same. You cannot change this format. Okay, it has to be always into this same format. In the case of Oracle, whatever the next format you have given, 12, 09 and 2019, the same format will be accepted. Okay, so let me clarify this point. So in the case of MySQL, always date format must be uh, something like this, or you can say 12 and 31st. So this format always has to be there in the case of MySQL, but in the case of Oracle, always the date format must be 31st, 12 and 1990. Keep this point also in your mind. Okay, it's an important point. So these are the string format, or you can say, okay, these are the format, or these are the date format that you have to always remember. In the case of MySQL, upper one, and in the case of Oracle, lower one is the format that always you have to provide. Okay, okay. And Bublan is asking, what is the difference between primary key and unique key? We'll see that. Okay, there is a small difference between these two. Let me see that. Okay. And last point what I was covering is, if suppose my requirement is, instead of instead of making only single column as a unique, okay, because my requirement is some my requirement is like this. You try to understand this. My requirement is, see, in your wherever, if you are studying or somewhere, okay, maybe Java puzzles, and your employee, and your suppose student id is 101, and my institute branch is Mathikere, suppose. Okay, mkr. So similarly, how we will consider a different student, this is maybe, you can say some student. Okay, now another student will also have the id, and okay, so this, we cannot treat the same id, okay, as a different student, correct? You have to understand this. So this is the thing actually I want to implement, that whatever the branch name, okay, student id and branch id, suppose. Okay, so you can say institute name, and um, student id and branch name. Okay, so i want to I want to make sure, okay, that this combination is always unique. This combination must be always unique. Okay, because for student b, you can see here, for student b, the institute will remain same, even branch also will remain same. Okay, only id is different. Okay, maybe there is one more student. Okay, there is one more student whose id is same, but branch is different. Okay, btm layout. So in this case, you have to remember this. So this also, this thing I want to implement. Okay, that means overall combination I want to make it as unique. So there are few, so let me create one table here. Create table students. Already this student table is present. Let me check the description. Let me remove these columns. Okay. remove this table itself. Okay, now I will create the table again. Create table. Table name is students. Somebody is asking. To Boblan, I think everyone are able to listen my voice because Boblan is facing some. Yes, everyone is asking. No, everyone is listening my voice now. Nobody is facing problem. I think there is a issue at your end, Boblan. You have to fix it. Now, let me create the table. Table name is students, and I'm having SID column, or maybe before that, okay, uh, branch name, suppose branch, or maybe institute name. Okay, varchar institute name as varchar 25. Let's suppose institute name. Student ID is of type int. Okay, is of type int, and always I want user to always provide student ID, or let me implement that in later point in time. Student ID and branch varchar 20 and student name now. Okay, 30 student phone, some type begin and date of birth, type date. Okay, let me create this. Now my requirement is I want the combination of institute name, student ID and branch. Sagar, you can use blob and clob data type with that. Yes, blob and clob you can use to store the image data into the database. Okay, so now institute name. I want to. I think you are not concentrating here, right? You are. Yeah, just concentrate here. So if you are you already understood. Okay, don't worry. We will. I will see that. I'll ask in future classes that I will repeat the same question again. How to define, okay, the composite primary key. I will ask this thing, how to define composite key. We used all data types, so I asked. Okay, cool. So just concentrate here. I want to take the combination of institute name, student ID and branch. So here you can, and so this combination I want always unique. Okay, so here you can specify unique you want. What unique you want? I want unique this particular combination. Which combination? Institute name, student ID and branch. This particular combination I want unique. Specify this. Okay, now you can see the description. Okay, so here you can see only it is saying only you can say because there is multi key actually. So you can see here institute name, SID and branch. It's a kind of composite key you're trying to make. Now this time I will insert the record, insert into, okay, table name is students, and I will include the column institute name, student ID, branch name, phone. Okay, now institute name, let's suppose some name, let's suppose institute code. Actually it has to be, okay, we'll remove it, we'll rename it later. Let's say this is the institute code, and now student ID, so student ID is 101, let's assume, and branch, so branch I'm taking as Matikere, MKR. and some student name, some name, and phone I'm giving something, and date of birth. Okay, so you can see here. Oh, sorry. You can see here. Now the combination of institute code. Institute code is JP. It's fine. Now student ID and branch. Now again I'm inserting the same records similarly, but small change. My institute is same, even the student ID also same, but the branch is changed this time. Okay, branch is different. So this combination is also unique, right? So combination of JP 101 and MKR. We will see. We'll try to enter a duplicate record now this time. So if I will give the same branch, same ID and same institute, in this case you will get the error saying JP 101 and BTM already present. Okay, you can see duplicate entry. So this combination is already present into this table. So this so this is how you can implement, okay, composite key kind of scenario where you can fulfill your need, uh, basically while defining, like, I these kind of scenarios, like where institute name and SID and branch combination of multiple columns are participating into that. So like that you can specify. Okay, so this is the use of unique key. So now, we have already implemented and we have seen it. Now we can delete it. Let me proceed further. Okay, so already we have seen unique key constraint will be used to identify the record in the database uniquely. Unique key and primary key constraint both provides a guarantee for uniqueness for the column or set of columns. Okay, so wherever you will define the column as unique key or primary key, it will provide you the guarantee that the value whatever user will enter, it will be always unique. Okay, sometime you may need the unique values for some particular columns. If you want to enforce unique value always, then you can apply the unique key constraint. These are the use. So already we have discussed these points in the last class, and these are the various examples that I have already shown you. And this is the way how you can implement multiple columns. You can add multiple columns while defining. Okay, and for MySQL creating table. Okay, and one note was there earlier. So the note was, while creating the table, make sure the table name should not be add. Okay, so we have to remember, you cannot create a table, create table name I'm taking as add. Okay, we cannot create the table name add and some column. Okay, and something. We cannot create this table because this add, okay, add is the keyword inside the database. So add is the function already defined in MySQL, so you cannot use add. Okay, remember this point also. It's an important point that you have to remember. Now this is the table name add one. You can create it. Okay, drop table add one. Okay, so, and one more note point is, you cannot use unique key constraint with the field of type long. Okay, so if any column which is defined as long, you cannot use unique key constraint with that column. Okay, remember this point also. Now we'll start primary key. Okay, so primary key, it's a combination of unique and not null constraint. So last is saying why, not a, anyway. So primary key constraint is the combination of unique and not null constraint. Okay, and each table can have only one primary key. This is the difference between unique key and not null combination and primary key. This is the main difference. Okay, a primary key column cannot contain null values. Obviously, unique key and not null combination related column also will not contain null value because already you are specifying not null there. Okay, so remember this. If you are using primary key constraint, then it is mandatory to provide the value for the column. Obviously, you have to provide because it's a not null also. No, the combination of unique and not null. What does it mean? Not null also. That means you have to provide the value, and that value must be unique. So here this point must be clear for all of you. It is mandatory to provide the value for the column, and the value must be unique. Correct? There are two type of primary key available: simple primary key and composite primary key. You'll see that. So already we have seen a small example earlier. So primary key can be only one column or the combination of multiple column. Where you are defining only one column as a primary key, it's a simple primary key. Where multiple columns are participating and behaving like a primary key, it is the composite primary key. Okay, remember this point. So now when you specified a primary key, okay, when you specified a primary key for a single column, then it is known as simple. Already we know. Okay, let me check it here. Okay, so we will see some examples now. So these definitions are clear, I think. Okay, when you specified a primary key for a single column, it will be known as simple primary key, and multiple columns, then it will be known as simple composite primary key. Now we'll see some examples. Okay, so only two tables are there, customers and student. So we will create one more table called, let me create one table, employees. Okay, employee id is of type int, employee name is of type varchar, and employee email again is of type varchar. 25 salary is of type double, I'm taking this time, and let's assume salary and city, let's assume city. Okay, city is of, and last column we will take date of birth also. It's very important by this column I'm taking always. So, okay, sorry, let me drop this table. Again you see, so here we can see, you can see here employee id int. My requirement is I want to force to the user that he has to provide always some value. For that, not null, right? And the value must be unique, so we can write it as unique key or unique only. Okay, but now instead of defining like this, you can write like this: simple primary key. That's it. So employee id is primary key now. Okay, so like that you can, but if you are trying to define primary key here also, okay, there is a problem. Multiple primary key defined, you cannot define multiple primary key in a single table. Okay, so always remember, primary key always must be only one for one column in the single table. You cannot define multiple primary key in a one table. You can define unique and not null combination also with the table, but okay, name. So 1 minute. Employee ID, employee name, and suppose instead of city, let me take it as a phone, and phone is of type big int. Okay, so let me uh, define this column as unique and not null. Okay, you can define n number of combination. Date of birth also you can define, and number of column you can define with this combination. You have to remember the only condition that you have to remember, you cannot specify unique where the data type is long. That time you cannot define unique. Apart from that everywhere you can specify unique, as well as unit not null, as well as not null. There is no problem at all. Sagar is asking, so Ullas is saying long and unique, why cannot we cannot use, because the value, because if you're defining the data type as long, the value can be very long, right? Maybe if you are defining like lot of, I mean, very big number, okay, again new number will not be, it will be having a very minor difference, so it will be almost similar. So you cannot say this different, means next long number is not unique. Okay, so that's why we cannot define unique key constraint with the long, because there can be minor difference, okay, between two numbers. Both numbers are same only. So this, so what is the rule of unique? The value must be unique, but in the case of long, the both the values, okay, both the big values are almost same. So this is the reason we cannot define the unique constant with long data type. Yes. And Sagar is asking, which column is best for primary key in real time, sir? Yes, so it depends on your requirement. Generally we are taking ID. Okay, we will get to know why always ID and these columns, because I want to define the uniqueness for each, each record. So always employee ID, or maybe any entity you are giving, that entity related ID itself is the column that you can consider as, it should be always unique. That's the reason we will define that particular column as primary key. Okay, and you can define primary key only once in your table. Combination of unique and not null you can define multiple time, but you have to remember only you have to avoid where the data type is long. That you have to remember. Now you can see here. Now if you want to see the description of student table, not student, employees. Okay, so you can see here, employee ID null is not allowed, primary key it is. Okay, and employee name, worker, employee email, salary, all are fine. Phone also you defined as not null and unique. So this is the combination you have defined. Maybe there can be n number of columns of the same combination, but here as of now only one combination I'm using. Let me insert into employees, employee ID, employee name, employee email, salary, phone, and date of birth. Employee ID must be unique, and you cannot skip this because it's a not null also, so you have to give the value. Employee name, some name, employee email, some email, some salary, and phone, some phone number, and some date of birth. Okay, okay, so remember this thing, phone number is also must be unique. So if you will provide the same phone number by changing some value of employee ID, and if you're not changing the phone number, okay, it will give you a duplicate entry. You have to provide different value, okay, different phone number you have to provide. Let me take it as this. Or suppose if I'm not changing the employee ID, I'm taking the same, and since it is a primary key, okay, duplicate entry 101 for the key primary, okay. So you have to remember, always provide unique value. So this is the way. Now similarly, there is one more way, okay. Let me drop this table, drop table employees, okay. Now my requirement is, I want to define like this. I will not specify primary key here, I will specify primary key at last. Primary key and employee ID, okay. Like this also you can specify, there is no problem at all. You insert the record, happily you can insert, no problem, okay. Okay, now last requirement was student table, right? So as of now, how many tables are there? I want to implement the same scenario where I want to take the combination of multiple, multiple columns. So in this case, again, let me drop this table, drop table students, and again I will create the student table. We have already seen. The student table create syntax. Okay, so this is the syntax here. Now earlier this requirement I fulfilled with unique constraint. Now this time I will say primary key. That's it. Okay, same scenario, but instead of unique I can give primary key. Okay, so now always you have to remember, whenever you will provide, you make sure whatever the combination you are providing, it must be unique. Okay, this is known as composite primary key. Okay, so combination of this, maybe mkr, student is different, maybe id is all, id again for this particular student, id is same. Okay, id is same, but branch is different, so combination is unique, right? Here you can see. Okay, so this is known as composite primary key. Okay, so we have specified the primary key like this, where multiple columns are participating. Okay, and if these are the primary, if you are specifying as primary key, so this combination you can say as composite primary key. So this is the difference between simple primary key and composite primary key. Got it? So similarly, similar example you can see here, create table student id primary key, always you remember primary key always you can define as only once. Okay, and as name, email, unique not null, balance is float for simple primary key. Now this is also for simple primary keys, sid int, sid. We have seen this syntax also, only one column we have specified. This is also known as simple primary key. Now create table student id primary key, name, street, fees, float. It's okay, that is also fine. And create table customer id, customer name, phone, long, and primary key customer id similarly. So these two, and here you can see this is for composite primary key. Okay, so create table so at last you can see we have specified customer id, employee id, and name also. Okay, how it will be? Customer ID. Okay, and this is invalid. You can see here. We'll see why it is invalid. Okay, so you see here. I'll show you here. Now, we have specified primary key here. Okay, before that we have seen one more simple. Let me show you here. So let me remove drop table employees. Okay, so we have already seen if we will create the table, create table employees. Okay, employee ID int. Okay, employee name worker and some name, employee name, and some column city worker 10, and I'm specifying this column as primary key at last. Okay, so this is valid. Now, okay, so here what they are trying to say, if you are creating the table, create table. What is this? Okay, create table student 1 SID in primary key. Already you are specifying primary key here itself. Again you cannot specify primary key. Okay, so this is invalid. Now here create table student. Okay, SID long primary key as name varchar unique not null. Okay, for both Oracle and so this is also, let me check it here, drop table employees. Okay, now if I'm creating the table and the data type is, suppose instead of, let me remove this primary key from here, you can specify anywhere primary key. Okay, but remember only once, it should not be repeated. If I will use long primary key, that is invalid. So remember one thing, unique key and primary key both you cannot use with the long data type. Okay, if any column which is specified as long data type, and if you are specifying as primary key or unique key, you cannot specify like that. Remember this thing. So clear? Now the note is, you can't use primary key with long data type. Okay, remember this point. Now check constraint. So this check constraint you can use in Oracle only. Okay, so we will see what is the use of this check constraint. Then when we will have the Oracle, that time we'll see. While you are inserting the record into the table, you may get the requirement to insert the data after satisfying some condition. Okay, my requirement is, if I am providing the value, some value, let me take the example of student table. Let me take customers. So see here, my requirement is always, I want to check whenever any person if insert whenever any person is trying to insert the email id, okay, I want to check whether this email id is ending with javapuzzles.com or not. Okay, that means I'm forcing the user that always he has to provide the email id which must be ending with javapuzzle.com. I'm forcing him. Okay, so before inserting I will check whether the email id is the correct or not. This is the requirement that I want to implement. So in this case, it's a very important thing, check constraint you can use. Okay, so create table. Let me check. Okay, foreign key we will see in tomorrow class. Then okay, foreign key we will see tomorrow. We can see default and check constraint. Okay, today. So check constraint you can see here. Create table, some table name, student id, and you have to check it must be greater than 100. If I want to check this, okay, you can specify like this. Okay, I don't think it will work in MySQL. Let me check. Create table student id of type int, and I want to check what I want to check. Student id must be greater than 100. Student name varchar, okay, 20. Now student email, it also type varchar, and I want to check whether this email is like whatever is there before this, but I want ending with javapuzzles.com. So this kind of scenario, suppose I want to implement, okay, and city. I don't think it, okay, okay, cool, it is supported, fine. So we'll see here description of student. Okay, now we'll see, we'll try to insert some record, insert into customer or not customer, student. Okay, now okay, so here we'll provide a student id, student name, student email, and city. Okay, and now we'll insert some 67. Okay, student name, some name we will take, student email, there is gmail.com, and city. Okay, okay, let me check. Okay, so here you can see my condition whatever we have specified earlier, right? These conditions are not working. Okay, these conditions in the case of MySQL, this condition whatever we have specified are not working. Okay, so it will work in Oracle, but it will not work in MySQL. So this is the use of check constraint. Okay, so remember this. So if you are using check constraint in MySQL, then MySQL DB server will not give any problem, but whatever condition you are applying, that won't work. Correct? Now we will see default constraint. Okay, default constraint. What is the use of default constraint? By name itself you can see while you are inserting any value into the table, and if you are not providing the value for that particular column, then by default if database server will insert the null value for that. If you want to change the that null from null value to any other value, default value, okay, then you can specify, or then you can use the default constraint. So So null is default value for any column, but if you don't want to insert null as a default value, then you can set some custom value by using default constraint. So this is the use of default constraint. We'll see here. Okay, so now let me show tables. Okay, create table employees, employee ID int. Okay, now what I will do, I'll use default 100 similar. Okay, or maybe employee ID is my primary key and employee name varchar 30, an email and employee email varchar 30. But default value is, if user is not providing any value, the default value is some JavaPuzzles @gmail or something. You can say mkr mathikere branch @javapuzzles.com. Always remember here. Okay, so this will be the default value. Okay, and any other column, let me take city. City also I'm taking 20 character and age. Okay, and age is of type int. If user is not providing default age, I am taking as 25. So there is certain requirement that if okay, people are not allowing minimum, I mean less than 25 age. Okay, so if user is not providing, so we are by default we are considering okay, this user must be of type, this user age must be of 25 years. Okay, let me create this table. Okay, so here you can see description of employees table. You can see here employee ID you have defined as primary key, so null is not allowed and it's the primary key. Okay, employee name varchar, yes, null is allowed, you have not specified any not null constraint. Employee email varchar and null is allowed, it's okay. Null, if null is allowed, that means is default value will be provided. If user is not provide anything, okay, so instead of null this email id will be used. Okay, now city also again null is allowed, so default value is null. For all default value is null, but only email you can see the default value I changed to email, this particular email id. Okay, and the age also I have provided the default value as 25 instead of null. So we will see that insert into table name employees. Okay, and if I'm including employee id, employee name, employee email, city, age, and here we can see employee id we will provide 101, employee name we will provide some name, and we will not provide my email id. It's okay, cool. If I'm not providing email id, you just don't specify here then. Okay, you don't provide email id also, and don't, I'm not providing age also, only we are providing employee id, employee name, and city. City is suppose okay, only 3 values I'm providing, and let's see how many values are entered now. Okay, see here I haven't provided any email id and age, but see by default the age and email id will be inserted by the database server itself. So this is the use of default constraint. Okay, so in this case if we are not providing the value for email and age column, so by default our database server will insert null value, but you have used default constraint, so that's the reason corresponding custom value will be inserted. Okay, so we will see rest of the things tomorrow. Okay. Any doubt, any confusion up to now in anything? Okay, cool. Okay, okay. Avnay is saying no, Ullah is saying no, Akanksha saying no. Okay, cool. So I hope everyone understood. So we'll see. And my request is please brush up all the concept, whatever we have discussed so far. Okay. And yes, so we'll see tomorrow. Okay. Bye bye. Good night. Take care. Bye.